Welcome into episode 1 of the Speeding in the Pits podcast. I am your co-host Wyatt Williams, along with Connor Klon Huberty. Sir, I hear you've got some big news. I know we're just starting off episode 1 here, but you had a pretty big life change last weekend before we start this show out.
Yeah, figured we have something to talk about week 1, right? But
Exactly.
went and got married last weekend. Wife and I have had, I guess, not better late than never, but it was kind of just inevitable of our 1-year-old son. We've been kind of putting our family together for a while now, so officially tied the knot. But yeah, great weekend all together. It was a hot one here in Minnesota, but yeah, just a really good time, and I've got to see a lot of friends and family. Obviously, that was pretty cool. So always great to celebrate and all that. But yeah, time to get back to reality. A little bit of a shell shock this week too. So recovering a little bit, we'll say.
Absolutely. And you guys didn't have any rain or anything like that. Like it was just, yeah, it was hot, but man, you avoided so many other potential weather, things that people worry about with their wedding. I have you ever heard the old wise saying that you bury a bottle of bourbon before you get married and you dig it up on your wedding day and that's supposed to be good weather?
I haven't. I guess we got away without doing it, but that sounds awesome. We should
Yeah,
have done something like that.
that's
That's
what I'm
great.
saying. That's what me and Nikki were talking about. We're like, oh, well, because we're getting married about this time next year. So we're like, maybe we bury it now,
Start
pull it
digging.
up then.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
we're considering doing it, but this is not a marriage podcast. This is a NASCAR podcast.
That's right.
We're going to get to business. We've got all kinds of great stuff for you. We're going to talk about the incredible race that we just saw this last week, an incredible finish, I should say. The playoff contenders having a rough day through wrecks, and William Byron literally almost exited the track. That was terrifying. But we're also going to talk about Connor Zilisch. This guy, he's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous for his age. Preview this weekend coming up. We got Bristol. Will there be tire fall off? Will there not be tire fall off? We're going to get into that, and we'll make our picks at the very end. But to start out, let's recap last week. Watkins, Glen in the playoffs here. Just a crazy finish. Absolutely crazy. Everything you could ask for from a Watkins, Glen finish, in my opinion, we got it right there. And Lee Diffie, he's just great. The call was fantastic. He just cares so much, and I love that. I love how much he cares. I love how much he's doing research. I'm not gonna lie, I was one of those that was a little skeptical when I heard what's this 100-meter dash guy going to be able to do when we're talking 200-mile-per-hour cars that are racing for hours long. This guy can call a race that's 100 meters long. Can he call a race that is hours long? And I was wrong. This guy he's great. I've been impressed.
Yeah, I guess I was a little bit more optimistic in terms of what to expect but even still, like, pleasantly surprised, I'd say. Like you said, you always want somebody that sounds like they care, and Lee certainly does. I think he's a great addition to the sport. I saw something on the internet this weekend that we should be working on a deal to get him to call races regardless of network calling the race. If it's Fox, if it's Amazon, if it's whoever, just put Lee in charge. And all you want is somebody that cares and can bring the energy, but at the same time, you have to know what you're talking about. And like you said, Lee has certainly done his homework here, and this crash course he's put himself through. The guy knows what he's saying. He's always on time. I think it's always great. So the longer he's here, the better, in my opinion. He's as good as we got right now.
Yeah, him saying the part about shades of Keselowski and Ambrose, I was just like, the chills went down my spine. I was like, whoa, that was awesome. But speaking of the shades of Keselowski and Ambrose finish, we had a very similar finish. That was wild. SVG just comes up, moves Chris Buescher out of the way. It's looking all but finished, all but sealed, and then SVG misses the mark. Buescher's able to slide himself in there. What were your takeaways from that just crazy finish?
I love Lee being able to call back to that, because listening to the broadcast live, I had totally not put those pieces together, even though every year coming into Watkins Glen, you see that highlight every single year, just all over the internet, just replayed and replayed. So great call by him to get that back. Just, again, testament to the research he does. But I mean, in terms of road course races, I'm not the biggest fan in the world anyway, and we'll learn more about that as this podcast goes. But you give me a finish like that, you can't help but get excited. I mean, that's again as good as it gets. So just a great weekend altogether. I think we'll get into talking a lot of it, but yeah, just phenomenal to get something so similar.
Absolutely. And you know who agrees with you that they don't like road courses? That would be Christopher Bell. That would be Denny Hamlin. That would be William Byron. That
There's
would
a
be
few.
all of those playoff drivers this weekend who just got caught in the mess. Absolutely caught in the mess. It was rough for all of them. I mean, we didn't even get back to the start finish line before Corey LaJoie started doing Corey LaJoie things and just wrecking the entire pack. And it was, if you're a playoff driver, it was not your day. It just wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, defending champ Ryan Blaney, he barely made it out of the horseshoe and there a bus stop, and his day was over. So that's again, yeah, just shocking. But there's a little bit of a common denominator there that you mentioned in Corey LaJoie. So unfortunately, can't be too surprised with something like that this early in a race. So bummer for all of us, but not
Yeah.
shocking.
Well, and I don't mean to be hard on Corey. I really don't. Because
Well,
I do think that he is a talented driver. It's just not working. It's just not working at the Cup Series level. He's got to go back down. He's got to go down to the Truck Series, win some races, like actually win a race before we even consider this guy coming back up, because it's
what?
just every week there's a wreck at some point in the race and the 7 cars involved.
It's honestly, I mean, you're not even really exaggerating at this point either. Like it really does feel like even so. And I don't know if there's a correlation to it, but ever since they announced that 7 car is going to be open next year, and that seat's not Corey's going forward, and they're bringing in Roddy Childers, and like that team is looking to improve, it does feel like the tides have kind of turned there. And to your point, like I don't know if Corey's ever really had the most impressive resume in NASCAR history. It's certainly not something that probably deserves top tier Cup ride at all, but I would like to see him go back down. It's crazy to say for a guy that's been in Cup now for what, this is his 7th or 8th year, I want to say,
Yeah.
full time. So
Yeah.
crazy to think that, watching him try to go to the Xfinity Series and at least compete and run top 5 would be something we need to talk about. But I think that conversation is long overdue at this point.
Yeah, no, I don't know. And that's that 7 car that you bring up is really interesting because we still don't have a driver, a name that's going to be in that seat next year at the moment. So that's very interesting all in itself. But I don't know. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a confidence issue. I'm not sure. But something has to change with that situation because it's just not working. It's
I think
simply not working.
it's a little bit of a weird comparison, but I think he and Bryce Young from the Carolina Panthers are one and the same right now, because it's you're so far in your own head at this point that there's no
Hey,
coming back from it. So
well,
it's brutal.
Spire didn't trade 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and DJ Moore for him. So I mean, at least Spire
Good
is
point.
somewhat ahead. You know, their young assets are winning them races, or not winning them races, but getting them in contention to win some races. Those other Spire cars looked great. I mean, really looked great. Even Corey, yes, didn't look great in the whole wreck situation, but still a top 10 finish for Corey. Every Spire car finished in the top 10.
Yeah,
How
and like
crazy
you
is
said
that?
there,
There was
unbelievable. One of the first times probably ever that 3. I maybe this year I'd have to go back and look. That's got to be the first time all 3 of them are in the top 10. I mean, they've only had 3 cars
the only
go
one
this
I
year,
can
but
the only one I can maybe think of is maybe at Gateway whenever Zane got second. That's the only one where maybe it happened.
yeah,
But even at that,
that
I
could
think
be.
Corey wrecked. Like I don't
Yeah,
think that happened. So, but what's crazy is all Spire cars finished in front of the Hendrick cars. There wasn't a
yeah.
single Hendrick car ahead of a Spire car at the end of the race on Sunday, which what? Like
I know.
it makes no sense. It makes no sense.
I think it kind of shows you like just how crazy of a race that was, and really how impactful that wreck on lap one truly was too. And I'm not saying to discredit Spire at all. Like I think they're building something pretty special with both Zane and Carson going forward. I don't mean that to disrespect Corey even more, but that's just the future. And
Yeah.
I think you give him credit for that, but at the same time too, like you look down and when you get past 25th, there's a lot of heavy hitters laying down there that are wrecked out that didn't complete all the laps. So one and the same, bummer, but yeah, you got to give him credit too. Like that's something big for Spire building going forward, and got to feel good as an organization to kind of come out of there with something positive.
Yeah, well, I mean, and especially with SVG taking the 88 car for Trackhouse next year, that's honestly the winner of that wasn't Zane Smith, because Zane looked poised to take that open charter from Trackhouse, but the winner of that was Spire, because now Zane likely will stay. I mean, where else is he going to go? He's turned down so many other opportunities because he was wanting the Trackhouse gig, but now that seat's filled, they're going to probably just keep Zane Smith around, and they're going to have two really solid up and coming NASCAR drivers in those two cars. I mean, they've got some real firepower at Spire. They are building something. This alliance that they've got with Hendrick has head and shoulders lifted that team above. I mean, they're not quite to the level, obviously, of 2311 with how fast they have, come into NASCAR and rose, but like, I'd say they're the second biggest rising team in NASCAR right now.
I would think they've in what 2 short years the hype of Trackhouse. Not to say that they're gone by the wayside, but I think they've passed them for sure. And
yeah.
I don't think it's that crazy to think like put Tyler Reddick in that 77 car and see what happens. I know it's a weird hypothetical, but it could just be give those two young guys more time. We might be looking at a totally different landscape here in 2-3 more years. I think the foundation's there.
What is the possibility for you that one of those two guys goes over and fills that 7 seat? Because if I'm Carson Hocevar, if I'm Zane Smith, and I see Rodney Childers in my building Monday through Friday, and he's Rodney Childers, so he's probably there on Saturday and Sunday too. But if I see him there 7 days a week during the off season, 5 days a week, whatever it is, I'm looking at him and I'm like, that's Rodney Childers. That's one of the best crew chiefs in NASCAR. I would really love, as an up and coming driver, to be put in a winning situation like that.
I agree. I can't imagine that Carson Hocevar is too far away as the top option to get in that car. I probably would guess. I don't know anything. I haven't heard anything, but I would imagine Spire right now is trying to pull as many strings as they can to get a big name driver to get out of the contract, move over. That would be the one to come fill that spot. You're trying to hit a home run with Rodney. Yeah. Like you're not putting a project in the car. So if they can't get a guy like that, I think Carson is probably the guy. I can't imagine it's anybody else at this point.
Yeah, and I credit to Zane Smith. I think he's well outperformed his expectations this year. But I think Carson is just more ready than Zane is right now. Zane still has some time that he needs to take to mature more. I don't want to say mature more, but just needs to run more laps. He needs to run more laps at the Cup Series level before he's ready for that. And I think Carson is more in a ready situation where, I mean, dude, if we've seen that 7 car be fast at times, that's how he's. I mean, you think of some of the names that the 7 car has taken out. You got to be pretty fast to be taking those guys out. Yeah. So if you got to be there. That's what I'm saying. You got to be up there. So if he's up there and you put a guy like Carson Hocevar in who has way outperformed his equipment, expectations, and crew this year, if you put that guy in that car with Rodney Childers, we could be talking a very, very dangerous team right there. That's a nice setup in that 7 car.
I think both Carson and Zane have to mature in different ways. I just think Carson's that prototypical hot prospect of super fast, but just young and not used to running super long races. So having to put together a full day is still something he's working on. And the Truck Series and Xfinity, obviously those races are so much shorter, but that's something that just comes with time. I mean, it's one of those things like in sports in general, you can't really coach and teach raw speed, and racing, it's really no different. So, I mean, Carson's definitely got it. It's just a matter of maturing and putting it all together at this point. So
not
I
right
think it makes
rearing
sense.
people under caution.
Yeah, that would be
That's
a
really
thing. Not
that's really the main thing.
Not intentionally spinning out with flat tires instead of pitting under green. So I mean,
Yeah.
there's a few things that he's been
There's a
caught
couple.
that obviously he needs to clean up, but I think that will come with time.
Yeah, well, speaking of tires, we were told heading into this weekend that there would be this God-sent tire fall off, and it would be a 5-second fall off, Klon. 5 seconds.
Yeah,
that's huge. That's big. 5 seconds. Really ended up being more like 1.5, like at the most. At the that's like
after 100 laps, more than the full race. Maybe you lost 2 seconds.
Well, yeah, and I mean, and those guys up at the front, when Ross and SVG were running up there, I mean, those guys were not on fresh tires, and nobody could get around them. Granted, yes, it is tougher to pass a Watkins Glen. Yes, that is definitely a thing. But when you've got a guy who is on fresh tires right behind him, narrow track or not,
it shouldn't matter.
It really shouldn't matter that much. There should be a massive speed difference, and there wasn't. So I understand you have a bone to pick with this whole situation involving the next gen car as well. So the floor is yours, Klon. Go ahead.
Well, and we'll talk about this as this podcast goes. You know, episode 1 is one thing, and Watkins Glen isn't necessarily the greatest example. We might have a longer conversation next week, but I'm just so sick of, like you said, Goodyear coming in bragging that they're putting together this tire that's going to change the way the racing is looking, and it's going to be more competitive, and tires are going to be at a premium, and you're going to need fresh ones. And it besides the Bristol Spring Race this year, has there really been a great race with one tire? I know they have the Choose tire or the Select tire, whatever they call that dang thing now, but
see, but like tracks, in the first option tire race though, Joey threw them on in the All-Star race, right? Yeah, it was the All-Star race where they started
supposed to just crumble, and they never really.
And he just ran ran crazy with them, and everybody else is like, hold on.
Turns out they just made a faster, indestructible tire. So it just doesn't matter. But yeah, I know there's been talk around. You listen to other NASCAR podcasts, people have mentioned that the way Goodyear makes tires now, or just the way tires are made in general, there's less oils and fossil fuel based products or something in them. I'm not a chemist or tire manufacturer. I have no idea, but maybe that has something to do with it. But we need tires that fall apart. And I'm not saying in a lap or two, but make this competitive again. Racing people know what I'm talking about. You need solid tire runs. I know they mentioned like 30 laps at Watkins Glen, so like third of the race, you'd maybe really see the major fall off difference. But it was like SVG, I think, ran like 50 laps on a set of tires or something towards the end of the race.
Something crazy.
The middle third or something, he ran 50 laps, and that's just not going to produce a lot of variety of speed, and you're not going to see the passing that you want anyway. And this car is not built on a variety of reasons for passing anyway. Besides the tires would be the one thing to help, and so it's just there's a lot going on there. We'll talk about it more as the podcast goes, but another failure in my book from Goodyear.
Yeah, and I feel like Goodyear has done some no pun intended good things this year. With the tire, I did like the whole Bristol situation. Granted, they're saying now that was a temperature thing, but that was awesome. And then them giving the option tire. I do appreciate Goodyear for taking some extra time to actually put time and effort into changing these tires a little bit. I see it. I appreciate it. We all really do, but it's just one of those things where it's like, you're telling me that this bag is full of candy when really it was full of nails. So it's like, it just hurt to see to come in with the expectation of 5-second tire fall off. Oh my gosh, this is going to be the best race at Watkins Glen in 10 years. And then it's like, oh, SVG is just running away on old tires, and everybody behind him's got fresh, and nobody can get around him. Okay,
Yep.
all right. Well, never
Yep.
mind. So
Yeah.
that was tough. Like I said though, I do appreciate Goodyear for taking time this year to really kind of change some things up, try different options. I do like the option tire idea. We just got to iron out some of those details with it. But yeah, I mean, coming in marketing the 5 second fall off and then nothing. It just hurts. But that's our recap from last week. All in all, a really solid race. I mean, just wow, what a finish. That's really my big thing. SVG barely missing the mark there in the bus stop, and then Buscher's able to capitalize. One quick thing before we move on. I loved the decision making from Chris because he notices SVG. First off, he was perfect through the S's. We got to talk
Mhm.
about that too. Perfection through the S's. I mean, flies through him, sets himself up to where SVG is looking in his rearview mirror, and that 17 car is getting bigger. It made him think, it made him mess up. That's all you can do at these tracks where you can't pass. You got to make the
Right.
guy mess up. He did it. And then when SVG is loose, he's sliding all over the place trying to get through the bus stop, all this stuff. Buscher has a full head of steam coming behind him, and he goes to go on the outside. And you can tell there was this moment where he was like, no, he's going to push me right up the track, right into the marble. He lets out of the gas, cuts behind, and goes underneath. It was cool. It was really cool to watch him take that moment and be like, no, stop. Cut back inside. Don't get greedy. Let's go for the long-term win here solution. And it paid off. It paid off. That was what an incredible finish.
Well, no, it was just two guys that I think actually know the line of racing etiquette, and we've seen some examples of what not to do this season, particularly at
Austin
Richmond here
Dillon?
a few weeks ago. Yeah, that would be where I'd
What?
start. And old Papa, Grandpa Richard Childers saying that the penalty would change last lap racing in NASCAR forever. Well, these guys didn't get the memo. They handled it perfectly. This is exactly how it's supposed to look, Richard. I know
Yeah.
you've kind of lost sight of that over the years, but yeah, just ridiculous to say that was going to change. And hats off to these guys, man. Shane and Chris. That was
Great.
how it's
Yeah.
done. Nobody wrecked anybody. I mean, there's contact, but you're not ending somebody's day. You're not
No.
totaling a car. Like it's just perfect.
Rubbing is racing. It's important to note that. Like there should be contact. There is no situation where it's like, oh, I'm gonna have to try and drive around this guy. This is an F1. There is contact. Rubbing is racing, and on the
They put
last
fenders
lap,
on them for a
yeah,
reason. Yeah.
on the last lap, there's especially gonna be bump and runs. There's gonna be contact, but it was done respectfully. It was done to a point where the driver who was moved was able to move the then leader and win the race. So it wasn't like, it would be a different conversation if he would have just sent Buscher, in turn one all the way into that whole parking lot right there. If he would have done
Right.
that, then it's like, okay, well, we can't do
Either
that.
of them.
But
Yeah. If
yeah,
either
exactly.
you gave each other, they gave each other, I should say, a chance to race back,
Absolutely.
and that you
Absolutely.
didn't take anybody out of the fight, and it's just the way it's supposed to be. I don't know how else to describe it than to say, watch that finish. Like that's just how it's done.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, that's our recap for real this time from last week. We'll move on to some hot topics now. Kalon, I understand there is some big news involving Trackhouse, possibly Collard. You want to kind of talk about that?
Absolutely, yeah. So again, a lot of speculation on what's to come, but Ty Norris, somebody that's been around the sport a long time, dates back all the way to the Dale Earnhardt Incorporated days. It was kind of Dale Earnhardt Sr.'s right hand man back in the day, obviously, and then as that team kind of disbanded and fell apart, he's been bounced around a little bit, but he was with Trackhouse in a leadership position. I don't remember his exact title, kind of like a general manager, I would say, of sorts at Trackhouse, but amicably parted ways with Trackhouse today. To my understanding, it's effective immediately. Rumor has it around Colleague that he might be a name to head that direction to maybe help kind of get them back on the right track, but just a front office position that's kind of bouncing around. And Ty Norris is a guy that's been around the sport a long time and knows what he's doing. So probably would be a big get for anybody. But yeah, Colleague could certainly use the help as well. So interesting to follow over the next couple of weeks. There's not a whole lot else to go off of yet, but whoever ends up landing him is definitely getting a valuable weapon in their front office.
Absolutely. And if it is Colleague, then we can go ahead and look out for another one of these up and coming teams to make noise. I mean,
Hmm.
I do love the direction that NASCAR's headed with its smaller teams because for so long there was the big guys. There was the Penske, there was the Hendrick, and there was, just your bigger name teams who in Joe Gibbs Racing who would just dominate every week. It was one of those cars winning, stuff like that. You'd never really see the little guy win. And now we've got teams like Spire. 2311 was able to rise to the top very fast. Trackhouse is becoming a team that is, competitive every week and has championship contenders. It's really cool to see NASCAR becoming not just 3 to 4 big name teams dominating every race, every season, every championship. Now we've got these little guys, and if he goes to Colleague, don't count him out.
Absolutely not. Yeah, it's like you said, it is fun. It's cool to see guys like a Ty Norris too. If it is true, again, this is a lot of speculation, but if it is true that a big name like Ty is to go to a I don't want to say Colleague's tiny, but to your point, like maybe like more of a mid-major type team. It's fun to see those guys take interest in those teams and want to help and bring those teams along and develop programs. And like you said, it isn't just the Hendricks anymore, or the Penske's anymore. Like Ross Chastain led a lot of laps this weekend. SVG was up front. I know it's a road course, it's a little bit different, but it's fun to see new faces and new places and bring new names to the sport too. It's refreshing. It's just cool to see other teams build and kind of just change the landscape a little bit. It's always fun to keep that moving.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of changing landscapes, Connor Zilish
That
is
was a nice transition.
all right. You like that? That was good.
Yeah, that was nice.
Connor Zilish is he's just an animal. Like I just don't know how else to explain it. He is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. They have the whole weird situation with the bus stop where all 3 of the cars pull in and Zilish had dominated all day. All 3 of the cars pull into the bus stop there, or didn't go around the bus stop, just went straight through. And it's like, okay, what's going on right now? And they all get penalized, sent to the back, and it's like, okay, well, Zilish dominated all day, but that's it. You can't pass at Watkins Glen. You especially can't come back up through the pack at Watkins Glen. And Connor Zilish basically says, hold my beer, and just drives straight up through the pack and goes back up and dominates and just wins the race. It was crazy to see.
Yeah, I mean it's almost crazy to say, but like doing something like that is insane, but it's not shocking to see from him. You just hear so many things about him and his resume at such a young age. He's not even old enough to hold that beer you're talking about. Like it's just
Exactly.
nuts to think that I we're setting expectations for somebody so young and he's not only meeting them but absolutely destroying them too. So I
So
guess yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead to the next part, but yeah, I'm just more blown away and almost at a lost words for it.
yeah, no, absolutely. So I mean, is this guy ready for Cup? I'm not trying to jump the gun here. I know we want to give these young guys time, but like, dude, he's
I
dominating.
I I I'm gonna say no, and I'm kind of a stickler about it. I'm sure some team he would have a cup ride if he wanted it next year at a lower level. I'm sure there's
Absolutely.
conversations probably even happening, but I'm a big believer, and I want these guys to develop. I know the money and there's sponsors and a lot of things that play a hand in those decisions, but I just think the days of old from 20, 30 years ago, you see a guy like a rookie, Tony Stewart, at in his late 20s. Like I'm not saying Connor needs to go run Xfinity for 6, 7 years, but give him a couple more.
Right.
Like let's see this guy. I do think that he needs some more time on ovals. I know he's had success in those lower levels, but put together some consistent runs over and over in Xfinity for a year, maybe 2, go win a championship, maybe 2, and then we'll have that conversation. I just think that's, even if he is that good of a prospect, like I just think that's the best for driver development. I think we've seen it plenty of times where a guy comes up too early, John Hunter being one of them as a recent example. I know he's turned things around a little bit, but you just don't want to rush them. I think you can put guys in a bad spot early, and it really hurts their career. So I'd rather see them progress and come up naturally over time. But that's just my opinion. I know there's probably thousands of people that disagree with that.
So how long do you think he needs to wait down there? I know you just kind of mentioned, taking a year or two. Is that where the line is? You think he needs 2 more years of Xfinity?
I think there's a world where like this guy was just running the Rolex, and he's been touted as somebody with F1 talent in America and as a road course racer, and we've seen a lot of the success on road courses, but he has had other success on ovals and stuff like that too. So I'm not saying it's impossible, but I would rather see like a full Xfinity season out of him next year. I don't think that's slowing down his development at all either. I think the Xfinity Series, that top half of the field is pretty competitive, and they're good drivers,
It's
and
very good. Yeah.
the cars are not exactly similar to Cup, but there's things to take away from what you'd learn there too. So I'd rather see that just for a year at least. And I mean, if he wins 6-7 races and he wins a championship, then yeah, let's go to Cup
It's
and
like, all
let's
right,
be
yeah, it's
on with
time.
it. But
Yeah.
yeah.
For sure. No, I see what you're saying. There is no hurt in waiting in this situation. I think that's really kind of the key of what you were saying there is, it's not going to hurt him to take another year and everything like that. Where we have seen it, like you mentioned with John Hunter Nemechek, where we do throw these young guys who have the talent, have a lot of talent, and they're just not ready yet. And then
Right.
that does hurt their career. That does
Yeah.
send them back down. And then that does, teams later on will be like, I mean, we've already given this guy a shot once and he blew it. Why would we give him another one? No matter how good he was in the Xfinity series back then. And then when we just send him back down again, do we give him a shot? So I see where you're coming from. It definitely opens up a lot of conversations for some of these guys if they don't have the success that they don't want to be having. And for Connor, with the pace that he's on, I mean, he's only 18, right?
It's I'd have to look.
I
I
think he
think it
just
is eight.
turned.
Yeah, because he was in high school. Yeah, he couldn't run like big ovals at the beginning of this year. I don't think like he couldn't
That's
run
right.
the 2 miles and stuff. So, or a mile and a half even. So yeah, nothing but time. And another name too, not just Barry, John Hunter, like Joey Logano's another guy. If he wouldn't have landed on his feet on the 22, like there's a hot prospect that came up early that didn't necessarily find it right away. And I just don't want to see that be the case for these guys anymore. Like I know, yeah, like I said, the one reason you come up is the money, but you can't tell me if he's not progressing through next year, like a top tier Cup team won't find a way to get him somewhere, like
Yeah.
Alex Bowman has another halfway decent year. And I don't even want to bury Alex like that, but there's other teams too. You pick guys like, hey, we could make a spot for you kind of thing. So it'll always be there for them.
Absolutely. Well, moving on now to our preview of next week. We've got a big race coming up. We got the Bristol Night Race, always a fun one. The last great Coliseum, of course. Have you ever been to Bristol? I have never been to Bristol before. Always
I'm
wanted to
not.
go.
No, not
Always
yet.
wanted to
On the
go.
list,
We need to
but
do
not
that.
yet.
We need to do that.
We do.
We need to do that where we just got to go to a race. But anyways, to the race that's actually happening this weekend, Bristol, it's going to be awesome. And I think it's so great too, because not only do you have all the stuff going with it, like it's Bristol, all that great stuff, but there's the expectations are so wide right now with, will there be tire fall off? Will there not be tire fall off? So that could play huge into strategies and everything like that. Xfinity will now be running where in the spring they didn't run there before. People said that was a big reason why we had the tire fall off. So will that have a big effect on it? Dale Earnhardt Jr. is returning this week, so that's going to be cool. I mean, dude, this is going to be a great weekend, and we've got some big news of an interview coming up next week. Justin Mondyke from the central Wisconsin area up here, he's going to be racing in the truck series. He's joining us next week after his ride at Bristol on Thursday night. So we got that to look forward to as well. But yeah, big weekend coming up. What are some of your expectations?
I hate to go back to it. I'm just interested to see what the tires do, but I think racing quality aside, like you got some veteran names on the outside looking in right now, headed into a cutoff weekend in the playoffs. I think in the Cup Series, it just screams opportunity for chaos. Like I think you could see a lot of vets take advantage of some young guys, and this would be the weekend to do it too. Bristol's just a perfect place for that.
Absolutely. And some drivers that we're looking at here. I'll start with I guess my pick for the winner that we'll talk about later. Um, there we live in a world, Klon, right now where there's a chance, there is a real chance that Denny Hamlin may not even see the round of 12. That is a real world possibility. And that's not the only big name that's teetering near that line. Kyle Larson is another name. There is a real scenario. Are you ready for this? There's
Mhm.
a real scenario that this weekend, if there's a wreck between the 11 and the 5 car early in this race, we might be ditching the 11 and the 5 in the round of
Yeah,
16. Like that
yeah,
that is in the grand, like you mentioned chaos coming into this race. That is in the grand scheme of possibilities for this weekend. There
yeah,
might be a situation where the 5 and 11 car are not even going to see the round of 12, which is it just doesn't make any sense. It's mind-boggling to me. I cannot wrap my head around that. But some drivers I'm looking at, Denny Hamlin is great at Bristol. He's won the last 3, cheating on an engine or not, hopefully that doesn't happen again this time. But they won it last year in the fall. They won it in the spring. And this is just a track that he seems really comfortable at. And coming into this, he's going to be the full time on go mode. Like, just we got to get through
hmm
the pack, we got to get to the front. And that is what Denny Hamlin is really good at, especially at this track. And he's got obviously Gabe Hart as well. So great crew chief over top of him. I think we're looking at a really big weekend for the 11 car.
I agree. I mean, for the sake of being different, we'll talk about some other names here too. But yeah, Denny, absolutely, like the guy to circle. I think it has a little bit of storybook written to it. Whether you like the playoffs or not, like it would be that walk off moment that Denny even always talks about to advance the next round. But yeah, on the outside looking in, I think a guy that's quietly just kind of laid in the weeds here for a while. Chase Elliott. I mean, we're not for the sake of picking him for the race, but I think Chase is a guy that's had success next gen aside at Bristol. Always kind of figured it out there. Always been fast. So
Been good.
I think a way to kind of seal his resurgence, I'd call it. I know he was good all year and running up front, only the one win, but I think he could put some people back on notice here with a really, really solid run this weekend as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know that I am a big Elliott fan, so I'm all here for it. I've got my car right here.
There you are. Look,
Got
you
to get the
there.
car. I even
Locked
just
and
got
loaded.
this one recently. The Charlotte car, the red, white, and blue.
Oh yeah, that's one of the
So I even
better.
just
That's one
kind
of
of
the better he's
yeah.
had.
Oh, that's a nice car right there. So I'll be decked out in my 9 gear this coming weekend for this race because I'm hoping for a big Chase Elliott win, and that's another name too that he's not safe. There are so many big name drivers that aren't safe right now. It's just weird. Like, it's just weird to see Daniel Suarez up toward the top. Those guys that you just don't really
Yeah,
hear the name of up toward the top, sitting up there right now, feeling good points wise. And you've got guys like Denny Hamlin, who Denny's currently in the red. You've got Kyle Larson
right.
teetering. You've got Chase Elliott, who's I don't want to say teetering. He's I believe 24 points to the good, but still, that's not comfortable. You're not guaranteed at that rate through. So
Yeah.
it's going to be an interesting one for sure this weekend. So we've got our drivers we're looking at for this weekend. What wins the race this weekend? What is the winning strategy?
I I think it depends what tire shows up, but I do think there's something to the next gen car. And every time you go to Bristol, they always talk about rubbering up the top groove and how you can't pass without it. So I think unfortunately the same song and dance we talk about a lot with this car is you got to start up front. You can't put yourself in the back, especially Bristol. You're going down a lap, or something I should say. Like you have a flat tire, green flag, pit stops. You're going to lose 3-4 laps. It's just something you gotta avoid little mistakes, but you can't put yourself in the back even in qualifying. So be interesting to see where guys start, but get up front, control the race. Like you said, Denny's going to be on go mode from the beginning. Hopefully they just have a better effort in qualifying. It feels like that's been a part that's been missing for them for a while now. So stars have to align a little bit with this car. You kind of just have to be up front, but yeah, hopefully we have some chaos and put those guys on the bubble or on the outside looking in. Your Denny, your Brad Keselowski, your Martin Truex Jr., even Harrison, just start them up near the front and have a couple of these guys that are quote unquote borderline safe, like you said, and we'll have some fireworks early. That's for sure.
Absolutely. And we will move on to our final section of the show here. We're going to talk about some predictions. So, number one, let's start with who's your winner for this weekend?
Oh boy. Let me for this weekend, let me do something just totally off the wall. Let me just say Christopher Bell. I think
That's a good pick, though.
a guy that's just been, again, it's literally just his whole career, I guess, at this point. The way I kind of classify him, he's just quiet, just kind of in the
He is, dude.
hanging
He
around.
just, yep.
He's currently second in the points. He's 46 to the good. Basically, start the race on Saturday night. He's safe, and yeah, just give me him. It's time for him to kind of come alive here, I think, and make a push for that championship 4.
And he does it every year. Every year, right about here,
exactly.
There's just a switch, and it's like, hold on, where's this guy been all year? But like, he's been there all year. He's been in the top 5, but he's just so quiet. He doesn't do, he just comes and he just races. He shows up every Sunday and he gets in the car and he runs the laps and he finishes consistently, wins a couple of races throughout the year, and he's just quiet. You don't hear much from him until we get to this point of the year. I love the pick. I think it's a great pick. I am going to go with the guy I mentioned earlier. I just think in a do or die situation, Denny knows what's at stake here. Denny knows headed into this race that the opportunities, not just with this race, not just with this season, this playoffs this year, opportunities on his career are running out. They are getting slimmer by the year. Every year they get just a little bit less. And while there hasn't been a steep drop off, we all know it's lingering. We all know it's coming. It could be next year. It could be 3 seasons from now, but we don't know that. And neither does Denny. So I think Denny, Gabe Hart, and that whole 11 team know that coming into this race, and they know we got to get the job done on Sunday. And Denny Hamlin with a fire under him like that, that's a dangerous NASCAR driver right there.
Absolutely. And I was just going to say too, I know Denny doesn't love it, but for our sake as fans, it's awesome to have him going into Bristol outside looking in, because he is definitely the guy that holds nothing back. Their strategy is going to be off the wall. They're going to be pushing buttons that nobody else is, making adjustments nobody else is. Like, it's going to keep things interesting just solely off that fact. I mean, granted, unless he starts in first, leads every lap, and we'd have nothing to talk about all night, but which is also possible. But just looking forward to seeing what kind of action he brings to the table on Saturday night.
Yeah, I mean, the old saying, do what they don't, is going to be huge for the 11 team this weekend.
Correct.
It's going to be really cool to watch. I'm excited for this. So we've got our winner picks. Now we move on to our championship 4 picks. Last week, we had kind of talked over it and stuff like that, but now here we are to make our official week 1 of the show picks. Who are your final 4?
Well, I've kind of backed myself into a corner here. I just kind of mentioned he's going to sneakily make his way to the championship 4, but Christopher Bell, I think, is a guy that absolutely can do it and is in a great spot too right now too, has such a cushion sitting in second. So I'll take Christopher. Ryan Blaney, just another guy too. I know we talked about it last week in our pre-show meeting, that a guy that really knows how to run the playoffs. I think the 12 team and Penske in general just really understand what it means to run these 10 races and advance in the rounds and score points. So I think he rebounds nicely this weekend. Not necessarily going to win, but just setting himself up for that championship 4. I think Kyle Larson is safe enough to get through, so give me him as well for the championship 4. He'll be my 3rd pick. Too good of a driver to not make it, too good of a car. It's just going to be inevitable. And then the last one, the guy that I think actually might be my favorite to win the whole thing, but give me Tyler Reddick in the 45 as well. I just think another guy that good enough on points Saturday night to not really worry. You finish stage one halfway decent, maybe get points there. You're probably good to go and locked in. So take the pressure off, get to the next round. And I think another car that as we get back to what I call quote unquote a little bit more normal tracks outside of a road course in Atlanta, you'll see the 45 come back to life as well, maybe even this weekend.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's another guy that could definitely win this weekend. My four, I'm going to kick it off with a guy you talked about for the win here, because for the last several years, he's found his way into that Final Four quietly. So I'm going to go with Seabell for my first pick. And this is not in any order. This is just 4 drivers.
Yes, I'm glad you said that because I was just picking names, but
right,
yeah.
for sure. So I'm going to go Seabell with my first driver in. My second, even though he's not looking perfect in the point situation right now, still on the good side of the cut line, I'm going to go with the 5 car of Kyle Larson, just a stud. Just probably like the best race car driver in the world right now. You could put him in a lawnmower and he's going to make it go fast. It's just what he does. Yeah, exactly. It's just what he does. My next pick is going to be Ryan Blaney. Yes, they had the steering issues last week. Yes, 3 out of the last 4 races, they've had some just really unfortunate circumstances.
Exactly.
But when it comes this time of the year, that team is always ready to play. And if they don't get taken out by a situation that's not even their fault, 9 times out of 10 at the end of the race, they're up front and they're in contention to win the race or have a P5 or better finish. So the 12 car is my third. And then my fourth, I'm sticking with it.
You're 3 for 3 so far with me here. So
I'm sticking with it for my I'm sticking with it for my fourth here. I'm going Denny Hamlin. I'm going Denny Hamlin. I think they get the win this weekend, and I think that gives them so much momentum because they've just been on this rut recently. They just can't. That's what I'm saying. They're just right on the edge of teetering off, and it's like the second they fall forward, they're going to run. You know they're going to go. They're going to just take off. And like I mentioned, Denny knows the opportunities are becoming slimmer and slimmer with each race that passes by and each season that passes by. He knows this very well could be his last opportunity to do it. I don't think it is, and I don't think he thinks it is, and a lot of people don't think it is, but it could be. And I think he has that in the back of his mind. They win this weekend, which starts a huge run, and they're able to make it to the round of 12, make it to the round of 8, and fight their way into that championship 4 and race for it in Phoenix. So I think that is my championship 4. So 3 of the same picks. We're kind of in the same ballpark. A little bit of a different twist there at the end.
Yeah. No, I mean, with that being said as well, like I keep looking over the playoff board, like there's probably 2 or 3 other guys I'm reading through. It's like you could make the argument we see them in Phoenix too. So
yeah, I think that's the thing too with my picks. That still leaves out Chase Elliott. That still leaves out Tyler Reddick. That still leaves out
the guy who's
Joey Logano
right now.
That still leaves out Joey Logano. And every year there's always I feel like there's always a dark horse Final Four guy who came out of nowhere, a Ross Chastain, with the Hail Melon move. As crazy as this sounds, and I know, and I don't think this guy makes it, but he's currently sitting at a top 3 in the points situation right now, and this team is someone that nobody's really talking about, but they've been racing really good here recently, really consistently. Keep an eye on that 2 car. As much as I cannot believe I'm saying that right now,
You
keep an eye on that 2 car.
Just did the hardest double take of all time looking up there like, oh man, I forgot he was in 3rd.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, they're just racing consistently. They are just consistent right now. And in these playoffs, if you're not wrecking and you're continuing to finish in the top 10, you'll give yourself a shot to get to Phoenix. Like that's just the way this playoff format works out. And they're continuing to put out these consistent results. So I got to throw him in there. So I got to throw
Absolutely.
him in contention for a dark horse guy. I shouldn't say throw him in there because he's not in my final four. But it's crazy to see that 2 car up there. They're looking really good right now. Our last thing we're going to go over here, our first 4 out. And that'll be decided this weekend at Bristol, which, leaving it up to the high banks of Bristol is just, it's going to make for some really cool action this weekend. I am pumped for this one. So, Connor, Mr. Klon, who is your first 4 out?
I'm just looking at the people out right now. Again, I mentioned it, but it's Denny Hamlin, Brad Keselowski, Martin Truex Jr., and Harrison Burton are the 4 out. And looking over it, I'm not going to change my pick based on a tire because I think if the tires are what they were in the spring, Brad Keselowski is another name I'd circle as an older guy that just knows how to drive in conditions like
It's that
that.
late
But
model experience, man. Some of these
yeah,
guys, they just know what to do in that situation.
so let's just hypothetically say it's the same tires last fall, and we're going to see a race like that just for the sake of being consistent. And I do think Denny has a good day. He's only 6 points out on the cut right now. That's very feasible. I look at a guy like Chase Briscoe, who, not that they haven't, they're 11th in points right now. That's a good year, all things considered, and there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think he's 6 spots better than Denny Hamlin on a Bristol Saturday night. So I immediately Chase Briscoe's my first 4 out. I think Harrison Burton, another guy just not having the speed. I think Martin Truex Jr., also a guy that I genuinely don't know, given his interview leaving Watkins Glen last weekend, how much he genuinely really cares to finish out the playoffs. I think he's just there to kind of race for the fun of it right now.
It's heartbreaking. I hate it. Yeah. I hate it so much. It breaks my heart to watch.
No, you're good. I think it's fitting to bring up too, because that line you mentioned that these old guys kind of hit sometimes. I think Martin might be one of those guys that's feeling it too. So it's one of those things that, like you said, you never really know if it's Denny next year or when. But so yeah, Martin, Harrison, Chase. I want to say Ty Gibbs is going to have a good day, and he's 6 points better than, or I guess in this case he'd be probably 12 points better than Brad Keselowski, I guess, if I'm reading that correctly.
Yep.
But
he'd have to be 12. Yep.
Give me Brad Keselowski making it in, Ty Gibbs out, just veteran versus a young guy, and again, not just like Chase Briscoe too. Nothing wrong with Ty Gibbs. Heck of a year where you're at in points. They're only building good things, but veteran versus the youth. I'll take the experience in Bristol.
Especially at Bristol. Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I'm going to follow suit with you there with Harrison Burton for sure. Valiant effort here at the end of the year. I mean, really just even being here to be in this conversation is far higher than I thought they would be right now.
I'm not going to lie, them only being 20 points off the cut, like I'm not saying they could point it in, but I thought they were going to be a lot more points off the cut coming into the third race than 20.
And here's the thing. If they can sneak up there and get a top 5 finish in both stages, a top 10 finish could do it, especially if other guys. Crazy. No, I mean, it's not out of the question. It's absolutely not out of the question. If other guys, AKA Martin Truex, Keselowski, if Hamlin does end up wrecking and Gibbs all have bad days and Burton just happens to collect some stage points in 1 and 2 and finish solid, we could be talking about Harrison Burton in the round of 12 right now, which
would be unbelievable.
Wow.
I mean,
would
truly
be crazy. Yeah. Just crazy to think. So my first 4 out, I am going to follow you suit there on Harrison Burton. Man, did that Martin Truex interview just shatter your heart? I was just sitting there like, I'm watching my childhood just crumble to pieces with the end of this season, with Kyle Busch looking into the camera after Darlington and saying, maybe them saying that this old dog is, or whatever he said, when this old dog maybe you washed or something like that. I was just like, oh no, it's just, it's just heartbreaking. Happen, right? Gosh.
But it just doesn't feel like Martin Truex was winning a championship that long ago either. And here we are.
No.
But
it really doesn't. And it doesn't feel like even that, yes, but it doesn't feel like I feel like this season, let's put it this way. If Martin wins at Richmond in the race where Denny ran him up, had the questionable start, all that stuff that came with that race. If Martin wins that race, how different does this season look for that 19 car? How different is the attitude of Martin Truex? Does he even end up retiring this year?
I know. It's a crazy
There's
question.
so
Honestly, I
many
mean, there's a lot of
questions.
opportunity there.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
So, but I just think he's done. He's done. He's put out. He's ready to be done. He wishes that the season ended with the regular season. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw Martin Truex in there. I agree with you on Ty Gibbs being in there. Oh, man. But I like what that 14 team has been able to do. And they're solid at Bristol, I feel like.
yeah.
So,
Oh yeah. They're definitely like it's not an easy out for either Brad or Denny to get him out
man,
of there, but yeah, it's
oh
tight.
man,
That
that's
6
tough.
points is not a lot.
No, it's not. Well, I'm gonna save Briscoe, and I'm gonna take a vet with Brad Keselowski falling just short. I think Denny makes it through, and I think Briscoe makes it through. But I think Brad gets caught up as collateral damage in this one. Martin Truex, Harrison Burton, and then Ty Gibbs. Again, great season. Great season. Had some really solid races, couple opportunities to go up and win it, just couldn't capitalize on those. And I think that's a name that we continue talking about in the future with a
Oh,
lot of great
absolutely.
runs. But I think that Briscoe makes it through on this one. I think that SHR has nothing to lose at this point, so they're putting all their eggs in one basket and sending that
Correct.
14 car out there with balls to the wall, man, just ready to rock and roll. So I'm gonna save Briscoe, but yeah, that is my final four picks.
I think they're good.
That's
I
our
think those are
that's
good
our
picks all the way around.
yeah, that's our first episode though, bud.
It's crazy. Here we are.
Good stuff. We made it through the first episode. Nobody died. That's good.
That's right. That's baby steps, right? We'll
Exactly.
build from there.
Absolutely. Well, we've got a great show for you next week. We will have that with an interview, of course, with Justin Mondyke, who just ran in the Truck Series. At that time, he will have just run in the Truck Series. He's running this Thursday night. So be sure to go check out Justin driving for Young's Motorsports. I believe he'll be in the O2 car, which, yeah, is really cool to see. I got to cover Justin's races a couple times this year. We did a whole special on the State Park Speedway up here in the Wausau area. It closed down.
Nice.
So we did a whole special on that and got to spend some time with Justin during this race season and get to see him. He's a competitor. He's a great driver. And there was one night where it's Larry Deachin's Memorial up here. It's a huge race. And a bunch of NASCAR drivers actually come and race in that. Ty Majeski was there. Derek Kraus was there. Luke Fenhouse was there. And Justin Mondyke fended them all off. He drove up to the front, sat up there all day, battled with all of them, and held them behind him. So the dude's got some kick underneath him, and he's a short track driver. What a better place to start than Bristol. So I'm pumped to see Justin. We'll have him on next week. I confirmed that with him today. So that'll be a lot of fun. He'll be racing in Kansas as well. So we'll get to talk to him about how the Bristol race went, how he's able to turn that into, positives heading forward to Kansas. We'll also break down this last race, talk about the first four out and everything that goes with it. It's going to be a big episode. A lot of fun. We will have our final 12 racers next time we hop on here.
Yeah. Yeah. Looking forward to the chaos, man. I know this weekend's going to have something that we didn't talk about tonight that comes up, and we'll have to pick up the pieces next week.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to give us a like, subscribe wherever you're watching us. We appreciate it very much. And yeah, this is the Speeding in the Pits podcast. Peace out.